Well, I'm going to take a wild guess and just say that your opinion of that card and specifically that main event is probably based on your expectations. That was a very brief, very brisk, and mostly action packed early edition of WWE Backlash. And for the most part, it was an action packed, intense card that I think pleased a lot of people with a main event that was unquestionably, I would say, better than the main event that John Cena had at WrestleMania, but still has some of the limitations of a modern John Cena match. And we have the next chapter in the heel run of John Cena. Tonight, instead of John Cena relying on Travis Scott, relying on a theoretical Rock, it was only John Cena. The spotlight was truly cleared for Cena tonight to shine in his own way, and the John Cena as a heel to fully envelop the entirety of this match. What we learned tonight was that John Cena matches are very, very dangerous for refs. There was so many ref bumps. This was, as you might expect, an overbooked main event with tons of false finishes, tons of ref bumps, chaos, RKOs, officials taking it. We're going to break it all down a little bit later. But in the end, in the very end, it is the villain, John Cena, once again successful in his title defense. And now on to the next chapter. John Cena is apparently the strongest guy of all time when it comes to having a title belt in his hand. He wields amazing, amazing power. Several cameos in the main event, including one R-Truth out there to help out his friend, his childhood hero, John Cena. We will break down that and the other matches on the card. Well, I think there's going to be a lot of opinions on that main event. A lot of divided takes in a bunch of different ways. I don't think the rest of the card will be quite as polarizing. In fact, I think the rest of the card will actually be pretty well received by you guys, but I can be wrong. You can let me know, though, right down there in the chat, the way E is letting me know, the way Joe is letting me know, the way the boss is letting me know. Go ahead, sound off in the chat. What did you think of Backlash? What did you think of the main event? Or were you blown away by any of the undercard matches? I guess I can introduce myself. I am Rob. This is the Nocturnal Knockout, and we are Brass Ring Media. This is your WWE Backlash post show, Saturday, May 10th, 2025. What's up, guys? How you feeling after that? You liked it, Mike? Again, I think this main event is going to be polarizing. Unlike Mania, where you can argue that they didn't even really try at Mania. Like, the match never really got started. You had the interference spot come in, and it was all said and done. Very reminiscent of WrestleMania 27, except for at WrestleMania 41, no one that we know of had a concussion in the match the way Miz did. This match was booked with more intent. This match was booked to be, frankly, more entertaining than the WrestleMania match. With that said, it still had plenty of limitations. John Cena is still pretty slow in the ring. And even when he's taking an AA bump onto a table, somehow that looks even a little slow. What's up, Fernando? You okay, E, with everything that's been going on, with all the family members missing? Been thinking about you, bud. Hope we're doing all right. Fernando says, this was the match that Cena versus Cody was supposed to be. Well, and it was even pointed out on commentary, Fernando, and I do want to point that out, was something I think helped this match quite a bit, is you did not have the embrace the hate storyline going into it at the end. There was still no remnants of Cody selling his soul in the Uber babyface, and Michael Cole and Wade Barrett made as much of a mention of it on commentary that Randy Orton is not in a position to ever be conflicted. That'll not be something you got to worry about with Randy Orton. So as a result, we had a much more straightforward match. Straightforward match that honestly, though, had a lot of the hallmarks of the old Orton and Cena matches. We talked about this on the weekly show a couple of weeks ago about some of the slowness and the deliberateness that those matches have had. This had that slowness and deliberateness, but it wasn't drawn out to, I think, an extreme level. If anything, I think it was a little bit referential. There was slowness to this match just because these guys are a little bit older, in particular Cena, so there is a little bit of slow pacing there. But thankfully, this is not a match where you had like a chin lock locked in for about 45 to 50 minutes. I think more important than this match, though, was what happened after the match, as we had a little bit of a post-match promo. And I wasn't seeing that coming, right? Maybe you thought there'd be a run-in or something if you're going to do something post-match. Maybe we're seeing a new debut. Maybe we're getting linked up to the next Cena opponent. But post-match, Cena gets on the microphone and said he needs competition. He doesn't need you, St. Louis. And he's the wrestling's last real world champion. Know the deal, says Pat is the GOAT. That was the other big main event match that preceded this. We're going to get into all of that. Pat McAfee, once again, getting in the ring, mixing it up with Gunther. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how Pat was presented and the behavior of Michael Cole during this match, which was pretty fun. We also had ourselves an Intercontinental title match. Dominic Mysterio and Penta doing their thing, with Dominic receiving a little bit of an assist by someone. We had what was possibly the match of the night, one of the best matches in a while, as Lyra Valkyrie took on Becky Lynch. Tons of spots, tons of heat in that match, tons of action. And we opened with a bit of a barn burner in the fatal four-way for the United States champion. And all of that happened only 3 hours ago. And there was a little bit of time since the show ended. So what we had was a brisk night. They were going quick. TKO wants you to order the UFC pay-per-view, which will be starting right about now. And they've got that corporate synergy all hooked up. They are locked in, ready to go, ready to take your money. You got WWE out of the way, UFC taking center stage. You got Bilal Muhammad in a main event. Good luck with that, UFC. I mean, I think UFC is supposed to be like the shinier toy in the TKO portfolio. And certainly when it comes to big pay-per-views, they can do bigger numbers than WWE. But think about that. On the night when you have Bilal Muhammad main event in one of your pay-per-views, WWE got Orton and Cena. I don't know what the intercorporation politics are, but I think WWE wins the night on that one. I could be wrong. I could be missing out on a great UFC pay-per-view instead of talking to all you fine people, but I'd rather be doing this. Couple of seconds. Let a few more of you file in here. What's up, all of you who are hanging out on the RVD Twitter? We love to see all of you guys. So many of you out there on Twitter. You got opinions. RVD's been pretty active. Some of the things he's been saying, been picking up a little bit of steam on the interwebs. What's up, Anthony? How's it going, bud? Man, before we get into any of the specifics of the matches, isn't it great to be just started a post-pay-per-view show at this time? I feel so energized. I feel like I have so much vigor. I'm so used to being stuffed up on food and trying to load up on caffeine just to muster up a little bit of enthusiasm for like a Sheamus match or something. But this is nice. This is chill. We could get used to this on the Nocturnal Knockout. Hopefully my name is spelled correctly at some point. I would say, though, go ahead and find us on social media right now. The boss, Zach Haydorn, in St. Louis. You can get some on-the-ground reporting from my guy, Zach Haydorn, right over there on Twitter, on X, on Blue Sky. He's all over the place. What's going on X? Anything important? We will talk about it. We will talk about it. All right. I am going to take one more little sip of the coffee, and then we will break this down from the top, match by match. And if anything pops in any post-show comments or anything like this, go ahead and let me know in the chat. See, Anthony's got a question for me here as I take my sip of coffee to stay awake, even though it's early. He knows what's up with the Irish coffee. Anthony says, in order for you to be energized for the post shows for the big four pay-per-views, how early do you want to start? Or because there have been a major NXT events before, it's going to be hard to start early. I want it as early as possible, okay? I'm really old, okay? So I want like a freaking early bird special when it comes to my wrestling diet. I want NXT to start at like 5 a.m. Eastern time. Yeah, we need that at like 2 o'clock Pacific. We need NXT to start there. It can go for a few hours. You can have a blowout show. You have a million Gargano and Ciampa matches if you need to. Just fill out the time. Book it, Sean. You can do it. And then about 8 or 9 o'clock, right when the coffee really starts setting in around breakfast time, we can start one of these 7-hour WrestleManias and end around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. I think that'd be awesome. That's my plan for a WrestleMania. That's the ideal time. That's what I'm going to do. That's what happens when you're old and cranky like me. That's how it ends up. All right, let's break the card down match by match. Let's go through it. Let's get our opinions out there. Say what we thought. Maybe give some star ratings. David thought we had a really wild main event. It was something, wasn't it? It was a heck of a spectacle. Remind me a little bit actually of night one main event of last year WrestleMania, but with a little more contact. All right, Anthony has like a legit answer to my my morning wrestling solution. David has it as a 5-star main event. I thought the match was fairly good. I would not have it at 5-star, but some of you guys who liked the match, like really, really, really liked that match. Anthony says for him on the early start time. For me, I think being the main event is 5 hours for WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Rumble. They need to start that at 3 o'clock so we can finish at 10. Fair enough. Fair. That's like a good, reasonable time. Not my morning matinee 80-year-old man time. Okay. Before the evening started, just before the main event or the opener happened, if you're watching on the Countdown show, you had Michael Cole's entrance. Now, Michael Cole was a huge character, obviously, on this night. There was a main event storyline that was built around defending his honor. So he got a hell of a pop on the pre-show right before the show was about to start. So we started out the night with a big pro Michael Cole sentiment. And this seemed like a pretty hot crowd right off the bat. It's great after you have these big stadium shows that we've had recently on pay-per-views, and you have wrestling in a little bit smaller of a venue with a really hot traditionalist, if that even means anything, crowd. And right there in the Midwest where they tend to get a little rowdy about their wrestling. Good job, St. Louis. You guys did well tonight. Cheers, St. Louis. And it was announced the opener would be the fatal four-way for the United States Championship. Jacob Fatu defended against LA Knight, Damian Priest, and Drew McIntyre. LA Knight came out first. Drew followed him. Priest came out third. And, of course, the champ, Jacob Fatu, came out last. Now, Jacob Fatu is a heel in storyline, but people are absolutely, absolutely into this guy. And I think he can remain a heel because his MO is just to destroy people. But there is obviously the split from Solo Sikoa, and then we'll talk about the debut that happened later in the match. So there are dynamics that I think are trying to pull him in a babyface direction. The problem is, I think, on the show as a whole, actually on both shows, is you have a lot of guys like that in the middle part of the card, who are just like badass guys that regardless of their heel or face designation, they're simply just getting cheered by the audience. And I think that might make things a little bit difficult for some of the more regular and traditional style baby faces. Now, it's a good problem to have a lot of badasses on your roster, but you don't really want to do that completely at the expense of the baby faces. You might just need to turn some of these guys babyface. But immediately there was a split off from the previous blood feuds as Fatu and LA Knight did their thing early on, and Drew and Priest did their thing early on. And I would recap all of the action here, but there's just too much damn action to recap. These four men went back and forth, beating the hell out of each other at a fast pace. I love how wrestling logic has seemed to indicate that if it's a multi-person match, these guys have all the stamina and they are super hyped up on their coffee or their caffeine or whatever it is they're in on, whatever they're doing before the night. They're all in if you have a multi-person match. Maybe you're all hanging out and you're not having my problems with matinee wrestling. So it's big, it's action-packed. And what this really built to was a really cool little sequence where you had some solo moments between Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu, which aside from the interaction that Jacob has had with Roman Reigns, he hasn't really interacted with the upper part of the main event. He has been mostly entrenched in that U.S. title scene, although he's clearly been the main guy in that scene. He's the biggest badass in there. But Drew McIntyre, while right now feuding in that scene, is a main eventer. He is a bit of a made guy, maybe a soft made guy, but a made guy nonetheless. So when you saw that square off, it really felt like a bit of a big moment, like something we could see in the future. And they had some really intense interactions with each other, and the crowd was into it. The crowd's into pretty much everything Drew does, and the crowd was into most of the things that everyone in this match were doing. LA Knight and Damian Priest were obviously the lesser of the two where the juice was at, but it's not like the people were disengaged with them. In fact, LA Knight was getting great reactions to everything that was going on here. At one point, though, in the Drew and Jacob sequence, Jacob reverses a top rope suplex into some insane offense that included like a swanton, torpedo drives through the middle rope. He had like a total gold star moment before everyone came back in, and they all just started on like the super finisher exchange mode. Everyone was just bumping their finishers all over the place. You know what? Why don't we give you guys a little bit of a look? Those four guys, it was them. You think that's what the storyline's going to be, David? We'll talk about that in a little bit. At one point, Drew hits a Claymore for a nice near fall on Jacob, but Priest pulls the ref out, and just in that perfect time. But as we know, there's a blood feud between Priest and Drew, and it goes back a ways, right? It goes back a year. It goes to WrestleMania. It's the thing that everyone is taking issue right now with the part of Drew McIntyre's career. Nonetheless, they have to be ensconced in their feud, and they just start fighting away and away, and the walk and brawl happens. And you know at this point why the walk and brawl is happening. The walk and brawl is happening so they can get away from the finish. It's clever enough in a fatal four-way, I guess. LA Knight is getting the best of Jacob for a little while back in the ring, but of course Jacob does kick out eventually of all the offenses. All the offense that LA Knight is throwing his way. Back outside the ring, you've got Drew and Priest fighting on top of a big crate, which ends up ending in a South of Heaven chokeslam all the way to the 4. So at this point, Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest are non-factors in this match. We are down to a one-on-one match essentially between LA Knight and Jacob Fatu. Jacob is about to eat it through the announce table, but then all of a sudden, Solo Sikoa is out there to save the day. Pulls Jacob right off the announce table. And then some emerges. Some help emerges with Solo Sikoa. And it's exactly who you were saying. It was Jeff Cobb. All the rumors were true. It was Jeff Cobb all along, talking about who was going to be the next guy coming in. We knew that Jeff Cobb had some availability coming up, and this might be his last best chance to ever be with WWE. And there he is right now, re-embedded into the Bloodline storyline, or whatever we're calling this group, the Samoan faction, and the evolution of that. You got someone outside the family. Congratulations, Jeff Cobb, for being declared a Samoan that can interact with the wrestling royalty Samoans. Therefore, undoubtedly extending major parts of your career. Good for you, Jeff Cobb. We'll talk about him in a little bit. It was a little weird, though, because on my couch, there was a huge pop for Jeff Cobb. On X, it felt like there was a lot of buzz for Jeff Cobb, and the building reacted instantly for Jeff Cobb. Some of them did for someone, but I got the feeling that the crowd in St. Louis might not have all been exactly informed of who that was. So I don't think it was as intense as it could have been, but got a good enough reaction. But Jacob Fatu is not necessarily being trusting here of Jeff Cobb. He's mad about the help, but he beats up LA Knight nonetheless, gets the moonsault pin, retains the title in its first pay-per-view since winning the title at WrestleMania. It is Jacob Fatu with the pin to retain the title. Jeff Cobb debuts. Jacob does not want the help from Jeff Cobb and Solo Sikoa. And that, my friends, was a hell of an opening match and opening segment. What do you guys think of the Fatal 4-Way? I've seen some talk that it was match of the night. I disagree, but I don't think that's a bad take. What'd you think of the match? What'd you think of the booking? Jacob Fatu retaining. I don't think there's a lot of shock there. And most importantly, how do you feel about Jeff Cobb joining this angle? How do you feel about Jeff Cobb overall? Are you excited for him to be in WWE? Do you think his shelf life is simply with this program? Or is there more to do? Sound off in the chat. From a match perspective, it's hard to argue with that one. It's hard to get the Fatal 4-Way matches wrong in modern WWE. There's enough super athletic guys that I think these matches are always going to be pretty entertaining. There's always going to be these wild near fall sections that naturally you could just get people to pop for. It's the same reason why tag matches, when done with the focus, are always fairly entertaining. To the naked eye, almost feels like they don't have to work as hard because they can do so much cool things to just make it look cool. On top of that, all four of these guys are pretty awesome at what they do. Jacob Fatu early on was not getting his shine. Everyone else was getting their stuff in, but he was the focus of the match. And that's where the match was built around that. But whenever Jacob Fatu got his moments to shine, he was amazing. Like I said, that one fire-up spot whenever he was reversing that suplex attempt by Drew, peak Jacob Fatu. Now, I heard some chatter earlier in the day, and it would kind of make sense that this might be a place if you wanted to so quickly promote Jacob, that this would be a way for him to lose the title without getting pinned. And that's not the direction they chose to go. They're going to keep the title on him for a little bit longer, it would appear. And that's probably the correct decision. There's not a lot of room for him at the top, so this is a good spot for him to be. But him in that position does feel like this position is elevated. Heck, when you look at this match, this U.S. title division is pretty elevated right now. Now it seems much more comparable to the IC division and how that had been breaking down on Raw over the past couple of years. But the U.S. title scene, I think, had been a little flatter on SmackDown. You have a little bit of injection of some main event guys there and some extra interest. And I think everything around the title just has picked up since Jacob's been the champion. But it makes you wonder where everything goes from here. Is this the end in the settled issue now between LA Knight and Jacob Fatu? I don't get the feeling at all that things are settled between Drew, and Priest. If anything, this should just lead to another match. I know people might not be interested in that. People didn't want them to have a match at WrestleMania in the first place. But I think after what you had tonight, it would be just poor storytelling to not pay this off in any kind of meaningful way. But obviously, the focus is at the top. The focus is going to be on Jeff Cobb and this full split from the solo led part of wherever we're going with the Samoan crew right now. Any update on Drew? He's fine, boss. I'm gonna say that as some wild and reckless speculation. I'm gonna declare Jacob, or I'm gonna declare Drew as okay. Voice is a little crackly here. Gotta take a sip of coffee. So I would assume this is leading to a big match between Jeff Cobb and Jacob Fatu. And I, for one, am all in on that. What a weird timeline we're living in now where TNA Impact is WWE canon. WWE owns AAA. And so many former members of Lucha Underground have such a presence right now on the WWE roster. It is a weird time. Like, go in a time machine from the time when all that stuff was really popping, from like the Lucha Underground era, and you thought, obviously the Monster Matanza, he's awesome. Obviously, Pentagon is awesome. Who knew that one day they'd be key figures on a WWE pay-per-view? Oh, how the times have changed. Me, I've always been a big supporter of Jeff Cobb. I've always been really into what he does. His matches in New Japan, I thought, were always amazing. His matches in ROH, I always thought were really good. Kind of out of the focus of things, though, if I have to say so. He's always a solid guy. A few years ago, was on the G1 Climax, he had that excellent match with Jon Moxley. Everything he does is generally well received. But I feel like he's never really been the focus of any of these promotions he's been involved in, other than on the lower level. But he's been around forever. Jeff Cobb is not a fresh face. We've got years and years of Jeff Cobb, and he's usually pretty awesome. Very agile big man. Going to have tons of chemistry with Jacob Fatu, you would assume. Those styles should mix pretty awesome. And then when you break them off there, you look at even the other guys in this match. There's no reason why he can't have extended programs and really intense and captivating matches with the likes of a Drew McIntyre, with the likes of an LA Knight, and with the likes of a Damian Priest. Not to mention some of the more physical guys you have on the Raw side of things. When you look at that IC division of Finn Balor, Dominic Mysterio, Braun Breaker. Tons that you can do with Jeff Cobb. Now, he's a little bit on the older side. He's not some mid-20s guy. He's probably in his late 30s, early 40s at this point. So the time is going to be short. Then again, Samoa Joe, similar body type, similar time frame where WWE picked him up. They didn't necessarily use him for an extended period of time, but the guy is still a freaking relevant wrestler in 2025. There's no reason why Jeff Cobb couldn't go down a similar path. I am slightly concerned, though, that the audience, though, might not know much about the guy. That is something I have given a little bit of consideration. They may have to do a little bit of building him up. That's fine. How much did they really know Jacob Fatu? I mean, some people did, and obviously the Fatu name can carry some weight, but all you have to do is establish one of these guys, and it'll all be fine. Overall, hell of a segment. Interesting debut. There's little parts of SmackDown that are getting a little bit better. They just need to shave some time off that show. These divisions are okay. It's all right. The problem is simply the length of that show with that roster is just a death spot. Even last night, YouTube, Cena promo. That's how you're supposed to watch SmackDown. All right, let's move on to the next match of the night. which in my opinion, this gets my vote for match of the night. And it was for the women's intercontinental title as Lyra Valkyria defended against Becky Lynch. I have to say, going into this in terms of a few weeks ago when the heel turn first happened, I wasn't too sold on it. And I'm still not really sold on it. I think it's very, very difficult to operate with a heel Becky Lynch. With that said, the heel character gives her a ton of latitude to be maximum Becky Lynch. And unlike her contemporary Charlotte, who seems to just suck the wind out of everything and is also like not able to cut promos anymore, not sure what the hell is happening there. And Bailey, who's off TV, and Mercedes Moné, who it's costing a lot of money to text a bot. Becky Lynch is out here really seemingly to put over Lyra. She has helped reset Lyra and looking like a completely different character than even the condition I would say we had her in a month ago, and specifically further back. When this Intercontinental title, the women's Intercontinental title first dropped and Lyra was the champ, the title in the division seemed dead. I mean, there was a little bit of life on the other show with the women's US title with Chelsea Green, but this IC title seemed like it was nothing. It was never been defended. Lyra was so meek and mild. You just didn't really know what the hell was going on. It has seemingly taken Becky Lynch to kind of bring this out of Lyra, but once it's been unleashed, I've really liked how they have presented her and how they have refocused her and how they've presented this title and this division and making it an important little trinket for Becky to add to her career as she comes in her returns, as she is going to be for the rest of her career in this GOAT status as this legendary figure. And even here, they're presenting her as the old guard, even though she's not really that old, but she does represent the establishment. She does represent the past. She is the most over women's wrestler in the history of that company, the second coming of Stone Cold Steve Austin, and all of that entailed. And you put all that together, it's leading to a decent program between her and Lyra. And I think it is really helping to elevate Lyra, to help Lyra be taken more seriously, to help you take the title more seriously and add legitimacy there. They've really leveled up Lyra here. Both of these women came out there with a level of intensity similar to what we had in the opener. They were not going to be one of these matches where you locked in a chin lock and stood there for a while. Now, in a Becky Lynch heel situation, you could see that happening, especially someone like her that could just talk and talk and talk to the crowd. That was not really the order in many of these matches tonight. Even the main event, as slow as it could be at times, you didn't have any match tonight that just had these long, slow, drug out parts. And I think it really helped the overall pace and flow of this show. Early on, Becky with a bloody elbow. And that elbow looked great. Anytime Becky ever gets any blood on her, and this goes all the way back, obviously, to the lead into Survivor Series many, many years ago when Nia Jax laid that fist on her. Becky with blood just kind of works. Becky has this real intense vibe and aura to her. So whenever she gets a little bit of blood on her, it just adds to everything that she's doing. Both of them got their spots in, though, early in the match, but it was mostly controlled by Becky. Becky really does work a really good heel style here. And again, it's not slow and deliberate, but she is taking control, taking command, doing all the Becky things that she's known and loved for, but doing them strictly in the heel lens, which makes sense. Again, even the man character, it's very Stone Cold. It is a character that on its face, a heel character that became very, very over. In some pinning sequences, though, Becky Lynch gets caught using the ropes. Jessica Carr ends up being a competent referee. How about that? You had some big slams here by Lyra, and you had the big flip, but Lyra hesitates on the pin, and it ends up costing her. They had a pretty cool spot where they ended up trading arm bars back and forth, where it's really cool, kind of like an underdog spot where Lyra gets it in, but then when the disarm her is coming, like shit's on if Becky's got that one on. So you're kind of building up to that spot. They get up. Lyra eventually kicks out of a manhandle slam after reversing a few of them before there. Becky Lynch leaves the ring to go grab a chair. And while Jessica Carr, the referee, is taking the chair away, Becky exposes the turnbuckle. Naughty, naughty Becky, just being so dang underhanded here. Lyra ends up kicking out of a second manhandle slam, but that angers Becky, and Becky starts slamming Lyra's head onto the canvas. And this led to a slow count, though, whenever everyone recovered and Lyra hit a Nightwing, because Jessica Carr noticed the exposed turnbuckle and decided to be like the slowest referee ever in doing this. And I guess that was the point of the spot, where she dipped out of the ring to go get the turnbuckle cover, which allowed lots of shenanigans to happen, including not being able to count the pin in enough time, and was like repositioning, had her head turned. Like, I'm turning away from the mic here. Hopefully it's close enough. All the way over there, stuffing the thing in, not looking at the match to get a pin. I got to tell you, TKO, you got to get your referees under control. Can we have Herb Dean give her a talk? Can Big John McCarthy let her know what the hell is going on? Because I'm pretty sure this was some poor refereeing by our girl here, Jessica Carr. It was just, oh no, I'm getting all kinds of notifications on there. Whoa. Breaking news. R-Truth has been AA'd onto a table. Hold on. Let's see. Let me get some video of this. And I have to sneeze. Let me put myself on mute. This R-Truth table spot seemingly happened just now as I'm getting text messages about it, and you're talking about it in the chat, and for whatever reason, I just cannot find it on my screen. There's also some guy in the UFC named Benoit DeSantis that just won. Okay, here it is. Okay, I think it went away from me again. I don't know why I can't find it. Let me read Ease recap. Easy for me to say. R-Truth was talking to Cena, saying how proud he was and he would love Cena even if people say he sucks and can't wrestle. Cena said, "You crossed the line. If you say one more thing, there'll be repercussions." Then R-Truth tried to be like, "I didn't mean anything by it," and then Cena AA'd him. That, my friends, is how you get Cena booed. Have him beat up R-Truth every week. Have him put R-Truth through a table. Thoughts and prayers to R-Truth. R-Truth was the only one that was loyal to Cena. What the hell is wrong with Cena? He talks about this toxic relationship that he had with the whole entire WWE universe for all these years. You know who he did not have a toxic relationship with? He didn't have a toxic relationship with R-Truth. R-Truth has been by his side no matter what. I do not think R-Truth is going to win the title, E. I do think it could be one of the last matches he has, though. Oh, they're trying to mute it so it doesn't play here on the stream. Okay. You guys shouldn't be able to hear it. I want to watch. JC, he called him. Truth says never gave up. He's always supported him. Truth says he's proud of him, even though people say he sucks and can't wrestle. There's Cena. He's slowly standing up. Calls him Ron. That was over the line. Say one more thing. Sits right back down. To tell you, oh no, he's got him up. He's got him up. Hey, through the table. That was your post Fight press conference update. Presented to you by E. And people texting me on my phone. Oh, looks like we got a tight one between the Warriors and Nuggets. The Stephless Nuggets. See, the Celtics got their win back tonight. These dang 0-2 home teams getting their win. I was hoping to see the reverse sweep. Bummer, bummer, bummer. Back to the women's intercontinental title match. All right. Eventually, after all the shenanigans and the turnbuckle, I think that's what I was talking about. Lyra gets a leverage pin. So it's a roll up once again, just like as they mentioned a few years ago in NXT, where Lyra got herself a fluke win. No time to celebrate for Lyra, though, as Becky attacks her with the disarm her and leaves her beaten up after the bell. It was a busy night for officials. They're out here. Adam Pearce, Jason Jordan, they're all coming out here. They're all going to save the day. And eventually they get things under control. Thank you for your service, Adam Pearce and Jason Jordan. For the love of God, that's Kurt Angle's son. Excellent match here between Lyra Valkyrie and Bayley. This was amazing. My opinion, it was the match of the night. One of those blood feuds where you don't want to see a lockup to start the damn thing, right? You don't want to see any slow spots. These women have been going at her. Lyra's fired up as hell. This is her chance to prove it. Becky is Becky. She's the man. She's in control. She's the baddest chick anywhere that she exists. And here they were going head to head, and I just thought it was brilliant. Brilliant. Women's divisions in WWE right now, not booked great. No. I don't know how AEW has seized the mantle as the place where the good women's wrestling happens on American television. Don't know how and when that happened, but we're in that era. With that said, put the ladies on pay-per-view, and they've had some really good matches lately. You had the triple threat on night 2 of WrestleMania. You had this match tonight. The women can go. Maybe they deserve to have like well-booked stories. And this story has been well-booked. I'm more making a comment generally on the state of women's wrestling within the company. But on this night, these two ladies, highest of honors. This was a great match. At this point, Backlash was looking like a hell of a banger of a card. Those two matches were worth the price of admission alone. High energy, tight crowd, loud crowd, good, crisp pacing. A little bit of contrast from what we had at WrestleMania in old parade of cameos, isn't it? Next up, well, before we talk about that, let's talk about this going forward. Actually, before we move on to the IC title match, does Becky have to get the belt off of Lyra and eventually have the match with Bayley? Or can Lyra simply fend off Becky and really legitimize the Intercontinental title? Does the Intercontinental title need Becky Lynch to hold it to give it some legitimization? I find it hard to believe that Becky is not going to get that title from her. But if they want to go all in with Lyra, I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping the belt on her and having her fend off Becky. It's not like you can't do the Becky Bayley match down the line, and that match does not need any titles. Becky Lynch does not need any titles. And when they heat something up with her and Bayley, it does not need to have a title on the line. It needs to be a massive match. That's what needs to happen. Now, there's some return possibilities with Bayley as it pertains to Lyra as well. But I do not think Lyra necessarily has to drop the title to Becky for everything that they're trying to do here and everything they're trying to accomplish to happen. He says Lyra is going to retire Becky's IC title, doing fine without Becky, and will be okay without Becky ever winning it. I tend to agree with you on that, E. But Becky's held a lot of titles. I mean, as they were mentioning, who remembers her holding holding the NXT title from a couple of years ago? Strange timeline we exist in. I'm seeing something coming across my timeline that location and date for final Cena match revealed. It's coming from our friend Dave. This is Uncle Dave reporting this. What do we got here? Wrestling Observer newsletter. Okay. I mean, I love you, Dave, but it's kind of to read your website. It looks like it's happening in Boston. That was and like so now I open the Reddit. That's not fun. No. Are you serious in that take though, E? I think we're back online here. That you feel that this will be the final feud for Becky? I think the Bailey feud might be, but I don't know that this is necessarily her retirement feud. I'm not really buying that just yet. Thank you though, Wrestling Observer, for totally killing my computer. You cost me like 4 viewers. E, that's a good call there, E. E said he wasn't thinking about Bailey, just like WWE doesn't think about Bailey. Good call, E. Good call. Let's keep it moving here. Let's get on to the men's Intercontinental title match. As you had Dominic Mysterio taking on Penta. Penta dressed so blue here in St. Louis. My God, pay-per-view blue here for Penta. And it was so very blue. The narrative coming into this match, both online and on my screen, was that Dominic Mysterio has improved. Dominic Mysterio has leveled up. I was just saying it about Lyra, but they were really hammering it home when it came to Dominic. And early on, Dominic seemed to prove him right. Dominic hit this amazing flying DDT outside of the ring on Penta. Like, this was amazing. Obviously, Penta hits all kinds of cool moves in the entirety of his wrestling. That's kind of what Penta does. He's the cool move hitting guy. Another Lucha Underground alumni. But there was this flying DDT outside the ring that Dom hit that was just perfect. And I think we're on a very slow build to an eventual Dom face turn. It's got to be hard to turn Dom face. And as I said on the WrestleMania post show, whenever you do it, he's going to have to be the hardest working face there is. He's very similar to The Miz, that because you've branded him already as this guy who can't wrestle, that's going to be in his DNA forever. And he's always going to have to prove himself, even long after it's been proved that he's a pretty good wrestler. And I think that notion from people who know what the hell that they're looking at has been disproved for a while. Dominic is very competent, but he's been competent for a while, but they're actually adding confidence to the character and competence to the character. And tonight was no Liv Morgan. So you had all of the dudes in the Judgment Day to help out. Carlito, Finn, JD, they all came out after Penta hit a big move. But the interference was too slow, according to Michael Cole. Michael Cole was all in on this being too slow, on Dom being too slow when he pulled out the chair. So they got sent to the back, kind of. Like, it wasn't very, very forceful. It was one of those send to the backs, but they don't really go. And then Finn provides a bit of a distraction to the referee. The referees were very distracted tonight. I'm going to need that St. Louis Athletic Commission to pull the permits on like all of the refs tonight. Officiating was just off the chain. They were jumping down, getting turnbuckles. They were distracted by so many people. Chad Patton and Eddie Arango were murdered in the main event. It had all kinds of crap happening. But during that distraction, you had El Grande Americano come out to push Penta off the top rope. Dom is able to seize the advantage and grab the pin like the awful, awful little heel that he is. But it was not without the assistance of El Grande Americano. So I think we have clear direction, despite Michael Cole just declaring flat out that was Chad Gable. That was not Chad Gable. It was El Grande Americano. And we were going to have a hell of a lucha showdown, an authentic lucha showdown, AI inspired, between El Grande Americano and Penta. Not a surprise here at all that Dominic Mysterio retains. You knew there was going to be shenanigans, whether it was the Judgment Day, whether it was going to be Americano, whoever it was going to be. You had the feeling that Dom was going to retain here. They're going to run with Dom for a little while. Maybe when he loses the title shortly after that, we'll have the full babyface turn. But, you know, he was recruiting luchadors. He was recruiting Penta. Now he's aligned with Americano. And the tension slowly drips out. More and more tension with him in the Judgment Day. This is the longest burning feud of all time. Slow burning feud. Finn versus the Judgment Day. And he didn't even have the females to have their normal banter with tonight. E says he wants Randy's contract, that he can just pay the fine for RKOing any official. I think if you employ Randy Orton as a wrestling company, you have to be willing to eat the fact that your officials are going to take RKOs. Like, your officials are going to be assaulted and you can't do anything to Randy about it. I think that should be like written into the statute in WWE. Dom retains. Plenty of challengers for Dom on the IC side, but ultimately, you got to believe this is leading to a big match between him and Finn. We did see Sheamus come back this week. Sheamus is always waiting in the wings, trying to get that IC title. Is he ever going to get it? I don't know. Kind of don't want to see it, to be honest with you. I just want it to be one of those things that's unfinished, but WWE doesn't really do that. They don't leave things unfinished. They eventually close those books. Eventually, Jey Uso got his title reign. Someday, Sami Zayn will get his title reign. Sheamus will get his IC title. Maybe you could do Sheamus and Dom. That wouldn't be terrible. I was just saying I don't want it to happen, and I'm talking myself back into it. So, I don't know. If it feels like this podcast is humming right along, it's because this show was humming right along. Before you knew it, you only had 2 matches left. Just like that, we were into main event-ish territory. Now, I don't know if this is exactly where it was in the show, but you may be asking, like, where in the hell was Jey Uso? And very almost quietly this week, they pivoted the Jey Uso Logan Paul match. I believe it was announced for Backlash, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was never made official, but it was made official for the upcoming Saturday night's main event. So essentially, McAfee versus Gunther was like the main event from the Raw side. Gunther being the most main event guy left on the Raw side of the card. Much like I think it's appropriate to give WWE credit for the way they helped build Lyra and change her character, refocus her character, and I think get the audience invested in a program with Becky Lynch to the point that people might want to see her win. I think they did a very, very good job with Pat McAfee in recent weeks in framing this match as something important. A much tougher task, to be honest with you, than you had to do with Lyra Valkyria, who's an actual wrestler. You are not afforded that same luxury with Pat McAfee. Yes, Pat McAfee is a former athlete and he looks like a football player, certainly, because he is one, but he's a punter. It's a little bit different dynamic, and he's a non-wrestler. And Gunther is your main guy. Gunther is your killer. It's one thing for McAfee to be having matches in NXT or to be having what appears to be Vince McMahon's last matches ever. It's another thing to be feuding with the ring general, the guy that's got 3 losses to his overall record, the guy that is to be presented as so tough, as a real final boss in that company. But they built this originally on defending the honor of Michael Cole. And judging by the audience tonight, they did a good job. The audience is invested in defending Michael Cole. I never thought I'd seen the day when a live audience was into Michael Cole. There, he's the babyface, unquestionably, but he was. They've also made Pat a little bit more serious in the lead up to this, at least as it pertains to this. He's still a complete nut on commentary. But the one thing that's always been true about McAfee, and this goes back to the stuff he did with NXT, when he's actually doing stuff in ring and there's a focus to it, he's very, very talented at this. He's obviously excellent on his feet in terms of charisma. We know that from his commentary, from his podcast, from all his other media ventures. And he has a pretty good set of physicality, but he really knows how to pull it together. He has really good timing, and he rarely looks silly. He tends to look more ridiculous in his role in commentary than he does when he's in the ring. Now, to start this match off, Michael Cole puts out this big disclaimer that he will be absolutely biased in this match. This reminded me of, like, back in the day, Jim Ross would do this when he'd be calling a Triple H match, because Triple H will have pedigreed him or something on the road to the match, and he would always put out the disclaimer that he'll try to be as neutral as possible, especially if Triple H would be facing like Austin or someone. But ultimately, if you listen to those matches, JR rooted pretty hard for the babyface. That was part of the setup there. But Cole declares that that's how he's going to be. And I should say, everything I just said about Pat McAfee in the ring, he can be as grating on commentary. He can be as distracting on commentary. He can be a real detraction. So what you had on this night was the commentary team of Michael Cole and Wade Barrett, who in my opinion have a great amount of chemistry and sound like a great pair. So we were spared from McAfee on this night, although we got some McAfee in ring. And I'll be honest, if I have to take one of the two, I'll take McAfee in ring over McAfee on commentary. Pat comes out, though, with supreme confidence with his mock Colts jersey, takes off the shirt. He's serious. He goes for some chops, but it's mostly Gunther toying with Pat. And that is the story of most of this match. Pat is getting it chopped to death. This was not one of the matches like the matches he had in NXT where Pat was there to show his hidden athletic prowess. This was about Pat just being straight up tough, standing up for his friend, and ultimately taking a beating from Gunther. This was more in the please, sir, I'd like some more category of beatdowns. At one point, though, Pat does land a punt on Gunther's back. So if you're keeping track at home, I want to say that Randy Orton would be a better punter than Pat McAfee, according to WWE canon. I think Randy Orton's got more hang time because his punts are a lot more lethal than professional punter Pat McAfee's are. They go in for yet another chop battle. They had a few of these, very much these standing striking battles. And again, that makes sense. You're not going to get Pat McAfee into some deep chain wrestling with Gunther. That would not be great. That would not be a positive. Eventually, Gunther starts inviting Michael Cole into the ring. He starts holding the rope down for him. He starts signaling him. He starts taunting Michael Cole. Pat gets him with a slap, but eats a suplex for his troubles. Pat started getting suplexed a lot in the later part of this match. Gunther locks in a sleeper. Pat gets out of the sleeper, but eats another suplex. That was another one. Pat fights up to the. He actually fights off a middle row suplex. Gunther's up there. He's about to slam him again. Pat fights it off, but still gets it before being able to fire up and get another punt in. So he gets a few punts in. He might have missed one or two. Nice little fire up though there by McAfee. He had a little bit of fire. The crowd was very into it. I'm clowning it a little bit because I like to clown his commentary, but this was fine. There was nothing bad happening here. There's trading blows as they are standing, and then Pat starts bursting out more of his kicks. He bursts out a scissor kick and then a super kick, but oh no, he ends up eating a power bomb by Gunther, and then Gunther locks in a Boston Crab. Well, McAfee is laying out in that Boston Crab. Michael Cole leaves the announce desk to like the biggest pop of the night. And I'm not being facetious in any way. Michael Cole, it was like thunderous when that man left the commentary table. I don't think Wade Barrett appreciated it as much because Wade Barrett's commentary was just a little off. Like Wade Barrett's a very intense, deep voice guy, so you need someone else to play off of. That's not really a criticism of Barrett. It's just part of the style. So commentary suffered a little bit, but the crowd was just so into that pop whenever he left the desk. Eventually, Pat got out of the sleeper, but Gunther pulls Michael Cole into the ring, and Cole almost eats a power bomb, but McAfee throws another scissor at him, another scissor kick, and only gets a two count. And there's another move that McAfee applies, and Michael Cole's out there helping hold the leg. So Michael Cole is, first of all, he's having his journalistic integrity at the beginning, saying he's going to be a little bit biased. And then he's flat out just getting involved in the match. I think Michael Cole's journalism credentials need to be called completely into question now. All this about him covering war and all that. I need to know the truth, Michael Cole. You are not unbiased, sir. McAfee at one point locks in a sleeper, but it's reversed. And McAfee is then in the sleeper. McAfee's hulking up. What's up, Hassan? Gunther reestablishes himself, reestablishes the sleeper hold. McAfee is essentially TKO'd. He's out of there. The match is called. But then there's some more stuff after the match. The match is called. Gunther wins. The best friends are helping each other up. Michael Cole is there helping up McAfee. McAfee makes it to his feet, and he's acknowledged by Gunther, given a little bit of a salute. And Gunther walks away. So Gunther gets the victory here, but McAfee earns his respect. What did you guys think of all that? This match was very polarizing leading into it. A lot of discussion of why this match was even happening, the way McAfee is being presented. Some people took issue with the storylines. But as a match, I think it was pretty darn entertaining. Now, if you have the opinion, like he said that like you should just squash Pat and he has no business in this ring, then I think that you probably hated that match. You have to give a little bit of allowance, I'd say, for the fact that in WWE kayfabe, these former athletes and celebrities are good at wrestling. That might not make any logical sense in the real world. But according to in WWE logic, that's the case. By what logic is Logan Paul good at wrestling? It's just kind of something that we have to accept. Now, again, it's really hard to accept that a punter is good at wrestling, that a punter can go head to head with a Gunther. but that's what we got. And the match was booked as a gimmicky kind of match. It was booked as a different style of match. If you think though that this didn't help get Gunther back on track as this killer, as this ring general, I'm willing to hear you out on that conversation, because this is just a bit of a side quest off of the overall breakdown that Gunther was having for losing to Jey Uso. The way they sort of framed it as losing to Jey Uso was like the last possible thing that Gunther could have ever envisioned. So, what's your guys' take? Does this help enhance Gunther getting back on track, or is this a bit of a setback, even though he got the win here? And also, what do you guys think of the match? The McAfee matches and involvement are okay if it's in small doses. You don't want to see it too often, and McAfee is too much of an overbearing character on the show. If he starts being too competitive with everyone, you almost wonder, like, why is he then at the commentary table and not just involved in the match? He thinks it was a compromise situation where Trips told Gunther, "You're losing your world title, but get to beat up Pat." That seems like a fair trade. I don't know who wouldn't take that trade. I think that's a good call. E. That's probably exactly what happened. Old Trips was out there. It was we were headed just before Mania. Gunther wasn't sure about what spot on the card. And he's like, "Gunther, would you mind? You got to tap out to Jey Uso. His cousin's running the company, but I got you back. A backlash. You could pin the most annoying announcer, Steph. Where are you? I don't know why he's a pirate at the end. They could have done a handicap Michael Cole and Pat versus that would have been actually pretty cool. That would actually be cool going forward. I think this is largely a settled issue, but say if they were going to have one more match of that after what they established tonight, as so much of Michael Cole going so far as his super friend, I think absolutely a handicap match would have been great and could have really, really been entertaining, but also runs the risk of being silly. As ridiculous as you might think it is for Pat McAfee to be in there, at least that is a former football player. I've already mentioned WrestleMania 27 once. Do we really, really need to go back there with another reference? But that's the last time Michael Cole wrestled at a WrestleMania. I think he wrestled in the pay-per-views after that. So that wasn't even the last time he wrestled. Him and the King got like a 3-match series out of that damn thing. Do you know how much TV time that took? 2011. Good God. What the hell were they thinking? The coal mine. Thanks, E. I won't quite quit my day job to do the impressions, but maybe I'll start a stand-up set at night. That's not even that's the best Triple H impressions are the super Boston-y, like, "Hey Steph, what are we gonna?" That's actually the good Triple H impressions. I am doing the impression of the Armageddon promo that The Rock cut, or I think Cap WWE kind of has some of that, but I really like the more Bostonian, like, "Hey Vince, what do you think? What if I go over?" Crazy idea, I know. I was watching some old Triple H. It was like 90s Triple H, but past the aristocrat, like early game. And he had a heavy, heavy, heavy Northeast accent. Heavy on that. Every now and then it comes back. Kind of like Cena, how Cena goes in and out, but I think Cena's is a little more consistent. It just when Cena physically gets closer to Boston, he starts dropping the R just a little bit more. That's the difference. Any other breaking news? Anyone else go through a table? Anything else we should know about? Are the Warriors and T Wolves still competitive? That new Nocturnal Knockout thumbnail with the space stuff is pretty cool. I do like that. I agree. Whoever said that in the chat. Good job, Dominic or Zach or whoever the hell designed that. Not as good of a job to the person that can't spell my name right. Natalia Silva just beat Alexa Grasso by unanimous decision. In case you care. Cena putting truth through the table was the end of the post show. Thanks for the report, E. Thanks for the report. All right, at this point in the card, Backlash had absolutely flown by, but it was still early. We'll answer that question at the end, E. It's a good question. We'll answer it at the end. But we are at the end. We are at the main event. For all the marbles, for the undisputed WWE Championship. For the bazillionth time, Orton and Cena locking up. For the bazillionth, but as they kept making reference on commentary, it was like the last time, or possibly the last time. I guess the only way it's not a last time is if Orton wins, then you get a rematch, but this was, for all intents and purposes, built as the final Orton and Cena match. And there was a lot of hype on this night for this match. You could have watched my show a couple weeks ago when I broke down all their major one-on-one pay-per-view matches. Or you could have watched this show where they kept going back, referencing them on was a Brian Pillman memorial show on the independent circuits. I thought it was the Brian Hildebrand show, but I might have been wrong on that. Reference them together in OVW, references their time, obviously, in WWE, framing this as the premier rivalry of that generation. Never mind the fact that it's CM Punk or Edge, but these two did face all the time. And if you want to relive all the times they faced, go back through the archives or even look at the video. Has Cena versus Orton ever been good? My question tonight, was Cena versus Orton once again good? Because it hadn't been good for a really long time. And the build to this match had been a little odd. You had basically Orton telling Cena he needs to have kids. You had Cena saying that kids are immature. He got a beer bottle thrown at him, and that the crowd was in an abusive relationship with the crowd, and he's here to ruin wrestling. And then he would eat an RKO. I'm not really leaving anything out there. That's basically what the build was the entirety of the time. That's basically every week. So there's not really that much of a story, but we're still in the infancy of the John Cena heel run. Even though so much about it has been talked about post-WrestleMania, you have the Rock weighing in, you have the lack of the Rock. But on this night, it was to be just Cena and Orton for presumably the last time. As you'd expect, the St. Louis crowd absolutely loved John Cena. Again, St. Louis crowd, you were amazing tonight. Give yourselves a hand. You weren't quite like a Chicago crowd, but you were a pretty darn good crowd. Usually when they're in St. Louis too, they always acknowledge like former champions. We didn't have as much of that, but obviously Randy Orton represents that sect there of the former champions. So he's I know he's no longer with us, but it seems like always a place where you discuss Harley Race, Orton Sr. Historic, legendary wrestling city, St. Louis. Long dueling, let's go Cena sucks chants before he came out. There was quite a bit of moment after Orton's song played. Now Orton obviously gets a huge reaction for the voice of the song, but there's just a moment of silence where Orton's sitting there, we're waiting, and it's a little bit of the anticipation. Kind of like when they would start at the Raws with the John Cena promo. You have a little bit of that anticipation. And then there it is. Cena out there in St. Louis Rams inspired colors. I have no idea how the city of St. Louis feels about the color of the Rams. I don't know if those are colors that were inborn to St. Louis. I don't think so because the LA Rams had them then, but I think they were in St. Louis before. I don't know the history exactly. St. Louis Rams, though, feel like a moment in time. They feel like the Kurt Warner Rams, not the recent Super Bowl Rams, not the Stafford Rams, not the old Eric Dickerson Rams. No, that's the Kurt Warner Rams. And I don't know if they're happy about not having a football team anymore. And I don't know if they really like that football team. So I think that was a pretty nice little troll move. Cool color scheme. I think the Ohio State one last night was cooler, but not a bad color scheme. Alicia Taylor, though, she did her part. She gave the full Cena announcement. The never seen 17. She had the greatest of all time. It's not like that other dumb announcer that has to get harassed every time because he doesn't learn what to do. Alicia Taylor knows her role. She knows what to do. Good on her. Early on, Cena offers a handshake, but takes a cheap shot slap with it. They both end up trading eye pokes because, of course, they did. They were really trying to emphasize that the same old Randy Orton. Randy Orton does not care about breaking the rules. Randy Orton's Randy Orton. He's an evil man. And that's the way it should be. Early on, Randy locks in this signature chin lock. And again, feels a little trollish at that point. You get some "you can't wrestle" chanted at Cena. One of the first time ever in full heel fashion where they might have meant it and not just been totally angry at both guys. The early takeaway on this match was simple, though. John Cena's hair transplant, it's really taken. That thing's getting like super full and filled in. You think the announcer was AAD? I can see that. I can see that being the case. But yeah, this transplant by Cena, it's doing some good. Do you know a guy? Like, can we send me some super chats here so I can get Cena's guy? Because I'm lacking up top. Got to stop wearing these caps. I need Cena's guy so I can have that spiky hair that he had at the end of the show. Early on, Cena tries leaving, but Orton goes and finds him. Thank God they didn't do any walk and brawl, though. I was really fearing some walk and brawl. We already had walk and brawl earlier in the night with Priest and McIntyre, so I had no interest in walk and brawl later in the show. Super chat button missing like Luca. Oof, that hurts on two fronts. And I'm out of shape. I'm out of shape like Luca as well. I might not make it to the end. My jersey's untucked. Orton and Cena are trading basic wrestling holds. It's slow, as expected, but not quite to that boring pace. There's a lot of points, especially in this part of the match, this kind of middle part of the match, where it was a little bit slow, but it never quite hit that groan-inducing slowness that some of their earlier matches had. Some of their matches in 2009 would put you to sleep. You'd be like that. This one, not so much. It would be right on there. But again, credit to the St. Louis crowd. They were into this match enough that it kept it interesting enough, and the performers never let them stop moving for long enough. If there was one point where they would have stopped moving long enough, they might have got a ton of heat out of it, or they might have just got booed out of the building. Both guys. So, with the benefit of hindsight, I think it's glad that they never really slowed down to that point. But then all of a sudden, Cena hits a little bit of momentum, starts unleashing a 5 moves of the doom sequence, even gets to land the 5-knuckle shuffle. Goes for an AA attempt, but Randy reverses. Cena kind of locks in an STFU, and then he eventually gets it, but Orton gets up. Orton gets his signature draping DDT. Orton loves himself a draping DDT, doesn't he? And then he starts his stalking, and he's doing all of his stalking. but the RKO, it's blocked into an AA. That's also an RKO. I don't like that spot. I think that's a really lame spot where he flips him over. He's doing the whole fireman carry, but as the guy's being flipped over in the fireman carry, he like grabs the neck, and so it essentially becomes an RKO. I don't think that's how physics work, and I don't like that spot. I think that spot looks like crap. I don't think they should use that spot. That is none of the efficacy of an RKO. An RKO is supposed to just sting you out of nowhere. This was just him kind of going with the fireman's carry. It's like him landing nicely on his back from the fireman's carry. That's what this seemed like. At this point, the match had been okay, but at that point, the match did not deserve the "This is awesome" chant that it was getting. That was way too early for "This is awesome" chant. I think maybe what the crowd was meaning to say was "This is over," or "We really like Randy Orton," or "Really invested in this match." I do not think the match was "This is awesome" worthy at that point in the match. After trading a few blows, Cena lands himself an AA, but it yields only a 2 count. We get some dueling chants. Let's go, Cena. Cena sucks. Another AA is attempted, but it's blocked by the ropes. Randy hits an RKO, but misses a punt. Doesn't connect on the punt. Should have taken some tips from Pat McAfee how to land a punt. Orton can't land his punt. Eventually, Cena gets an AA, but it only yields him a 2 count. And now Cena starts stalking Orton, and he's making fun of him, and he's doing that thing. And I think at this point is when I can declare it was at least a halfway decent match. Again, nothing to write home about, nothing that was match of the year, nothing that was super, super engaging. And you could argue that it was slow and a little bit of plotting. Again, that's a little bit how WWE main events are generally these days. But it had a little bit more personality. There was a little bit of more soul to this match than that drivel we got at WrestleMania. Cena misses his punt. No one could connect with their punts right now. The RKO is attempted, but it's missed into a ref bump. AA, but the ref is down. Now we start the ref bump sequence, and the refs in this match just took some. The job hazards for being a ref in WWE are always high, but apparently in an Orton Cena match, it's like the most dangerous place in the world. Cena shushes the crowd. He has a nice little shush to the crowd. And I got to say, leading into this match, what we had last night was almost like a complete babyface promo by Cena. So Cena's having a little bit of fun with the crowd, but as we've been saying in the entirety of this hill run, the crowd doesn't really hate John Cena. He's trying to get there. He's doing everything he can. They're somewhat into this hill run to an extent, or they're at least they're excited to see it, and they're excited to see the dynamic. But there's not a lot of genuine hate. But he's doing everything he can to try to work the crowd, try to fight the crowd. After he shushes the crowd, he leaves the ring to grab the belt, but he eats an RKO when he returns to the ring. And a slow 2 count, because after all, the ref is down. Orton starts taking apart the announce table. New and upgraded announce tables. Triple H era announce tables. But Cena attacks from behind and ends up killing the ref. The ref is dead at this point. Just out. Chad Patton is no, he's RIP. Orton hits his own AA onto the announce table. The table doesn't break, but it kind of eventually falls apart. It's modern WWE. We just don't break announce tables anymore. Can we stop doing the spot? It's never going to happen again. Announce tables just do not break anywhere. So let's stop trying to break them. The company buys good crap these days, guys. We cannot be going through these announcer tables. It just doesn't happen. Show after show after show after show after show. It does not happen. When are we going to get the message? Orton decides he's going to get his own table. So he goes and pulls a table out from under the ring. Now, has this been the case for decades now? The table is one of the biggest baby faces in WWE history. Those crowds will pop like hell for a table. Those crowds absolutely love tables. And Cena gets AA'd through a regular table by Orton. No, I don't know how, and I don't know why. This AA was kind of slow. You get the feeling that Orton was being just a little gentle with Cena here or something. Table is over, Weston. Table is over, James. But it seemed like he dropped him just a little gingerly. Just a little bit, not a ton, but he was just a little ginger. Made him look just a little fragile, a little frail. Chad Patton is still dead, by the way. We get a clean RKO in the ring. We got the ref running into the ring with all his heroics. It was like 10, 15 minutes that the ref was out. Again, I have such a problem with this in wrestling. Like, what is going on that you cannot get another ref out there? What is the logic behind this? Is it like a swearing in situation? They have a Bible and they have to uphold something. And sometimes we get another ref out there immediately. Like, have they all gone home because it was the main event? Somebody needs to explain these things. Randy then starts arguing with the ref, claiming it was a 3. He's furious. Cena hits another belt shot on the ref. There's an RKO, but there's no official. Now Nick Aldis and the rest of the crew, they're out to check on poor Eddie Arango because Eddie Arango has taken some now. He was the second ref after Chad Patton was RIP. Nick Aldis eats an RKO. We still need Orton and Aldis. They teased that on the build-up to WrestleMania. We never got it. People wanted it. We're never going to get it. Wasn't the hottest RKO of all the RKOs. But Orton's out there cleaning house. Hurricane, Daivari, Jamie Noble, they all eat RKOs. The mid-2000s got devastated in this match by one of their own, by one of their contemporaries. Bad form, Randall Keith Orton. And then Orton has a punt blocked. Tons of punts on this night. What a football maneuver, the punt. Think about what happened to Truth later on in the night. When earlier in the night, he's out here blocking a punt. And what does he eat for all his troubles? Not the AA he eats later in the night. No, he eats an RKO. Another guy from the early 2000s eats an RKO. What the hell is going on? Cena then hits one of his signature low blows. Not quite as good as the Heyman low blows, but effective nonetheless. Cena then hits the belt shot, the most powerful belt shot of all time, and a slow count. By a revived and somehow once again alive Chad Patton. But John Cena retains in his first title defense since WrestleMania over Randy Orton in St. Louis. The reign to end wrestling continues. After the match, John Cena gets on the mic, says he needs competition, but not the St. Louis crowd. He's wrestling's last real world champion. Wrestling's last world champion. I'm going to venture to say that the Orton-Cena issue in this iteration and for eternity is complete. We do not have to concern ourselves with Orton and Cena anymore. But at the end there, the finish was not the match. The finish was the promo. Cena says he needs competition. Who is going to be that competition? What do you guys think? I have my opinion. It's the pretty obvious one. What do you guys think is going to happen? I'm going to take a sip of coffee. You're going to sound off in the chat. You're probably right, E. You're probably right. But the obvious one, the one that everyone's talking about, the not the boss. The boss, are you going to be challenging Cena? I don't think so, boss. I don't think you're the one challenging Cena. The man that everyone believes is going to be challenging Cena, because why not, is CM Punk. Well, because the next pay-per-view just happens to be Money in the Bank. As we all know, CM Punk and John Cena have a little bit of history at Money in the Bank. Can't face a man I can't see. Exactly. There is a bit of this the sins of John Cena's past going on. Randy Orton being the first of that. There's not really a scenario where he can mix it up with Edge. So the next best thing is CM Punk at Money in the Bank. It just sounds right. Now, LA isn't exactly the town to do this. If you had a Money in the Bank in Chicago, obviously that's the town to do it in. But Cena versus Punk at Money in the Bank, that sounds just perfect. I don't know how they're going to get there, though. You have about a month, which is a normal pay-per-view time. This felt like a little bit of a quick turnaround since WrestleMania, and now we're back on a normal month stretch, but the lead into WrestleMania was super long. As we saw on Monday night, CM Punk is very, very focused on the Heyman family at the moment. What could possibly turn his attention towards Cena? Or is it going to be something else? Is it not necessarily going to be Punk versus Cena? It's very, very cute. It's very, very on the nose. And obviously, CM Punk is super, super over at the moment. Hot reaction to him on Monday. And the dynamics of that feud could be absolutely amazing. CM Punk essentially turned babyface for his big babyface run at Money in the Bank against John Cena, although he never officially turned. And in most of the iterations of their matches, it was face versus face, or, as was the case most of the time, it was heel CM Punk versus face John Cena. Much like the Orton and Cena dynamic, this will be the first time that it will have ever been reversed. And there's not a lot of natural things for Orton and Cena to say to each other. Yes, they have history based on what you've seen on TV, but there's not a lot of actual history between the two of them. They don't represent different sides of a coin. They don't represent in the past different sides of wrestling philosophy and what needs to change. They've always been natural rivals. Two different opinions on what pro wrestling can and should be, or what it can look like at the top. Two different philosophies, two different backgrounds. They were always very natural pairing with each other. So what's to say that they can't once again reset that magic and have that magic? We saw tonight that Orton and Cena, with smoke and mirrors, can be, if nothing else, fairly entertaining, even if it's not up quite to his standard. What can Cena and Punk pull off if that's what we're up to here? Or is it going to be something else? E is saying here, is Cena just going to get beat up by people from his past? Like Taker's going to surprise return? I don't think Taker and Brock are coming back. No, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think there is a little bit of this sins of the past. I don't know who else you can quite get, though. I don't know, Kenny Dykstra out there. Wade Barrett. Wade Barrett was going in pretty hard on commentary tonight. That might work. You can have him start mixing it up with the younger guys. Obviously, the story with Cody is not finished, and I think that might be where this all ends up at the end. But for right now, I'm okay with him reliving these ruthless aggression feuds. It's fine. What do you think overall, also tonight, of John Cena's performance? A lot of people have commented on my short. I'm right here on the Brass Ring Media channel, but him being washed up. Did he once again look washed up tonight? The hair transplant looks great. He still doesn't have a tan. He moves okay, but he's still really, really lumbering. Can him and an old man CM Punk actually have a really good match next month? I would love that, E. I would love that. Like I said, Dykstra, He said that would be cool Monday if Spirit Team music hits and calls out Cena. Oh, and then he would just, I need him to bury all of them, take him to Triple H, and him and Sean can resend them back to OVW. Can we have that? I would love that. I'll take that. The Money in the Bank pay-per-view is an interesting one, as you mentioned as well, because regardless of what happens in the match, there can always be a cash-in at the end. There will not be. This Cena title reign is not ending anytime soon. He's having this belt for a while. He's keeping this belt for a while. What I don't agree with some people who think there's going to be a protracted babyface run at the end of this. There might be a little one. There might be one night. There might be 1 week. I'm going to say Cena's keeping this heel thing going for a while. This is what Cena's wanted to do his entire career. And he's doing it the last year of his career. And I haven't been a big fan of it so far. Especially not last night. I thought it was actually a total disaster the way things were going last night. But Cena's invested. Maybe, just maybe, though, there's a little bit of a wrinkle there. When he says he's running out of competition, that he doesn't have competition. That can have a little bit of a dynamic. Right now, the Cena heel run doesn't have tons of dynamic because the only dynamic is against the fans. There's not really a reason for him to feud with any of his opponents. His opponents are the fans. And as I mentioned when it happened, that was okay for the first week, but eventually it had to translate into something else, into something meaningful. And so far, it's just been him against the fans. So he's seeking out competition. Now he's blatantly not acknowledging anyone. Is there someone to acknowledge? Also, something else to chew on. Were you happy that Goldberg didn't show up tonight? I really thought he was coming at the end of that McAfee segment. We're going to get some Goldberg this year, folks. Be ready for it. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid of the impending Goldberg. I do not think Shawn Michaels can come back and do an hour-long classic with Cena. I don't think Shawn Michaels can come back and do an hour-long classic with anyone. Did you see his match a few years ago in Saudi Arabia? Don't think that's happening for Shawn anytime soon. We will definitely get Goldberg before GTA 6. Hell, we'll get Vince in the ring before GTA 6 at the rate that release is going. Delayed gratification. At some point, like, the generation who played the game and is into the game is just going to forget about it, right? Like, this is going to backfire on them. Like, how can you release a trailer and release a delay in putting it out in the same freaking week? The GTA 6 is like the freaking Brodus Clay. Remember Brodus Clay was announced every week? And then eventually he came back as the Funkasaurus. Did we have something like that recently? Veer was always coming, right? Finally, Veer came. AJ Styles Cena one more time. Yeah, there's another Ghost of the Past. I didn't even think of that one off the top of my head because I'm tired and it's late. That's got to happen. That's happened at a Money in the Bank before as well. But we're running a little bit more with the washed up AJ Styles angle. Styles and Cena have an amazing amount of chemistry, or at least did in the past. And what's to say that they can't again? But before you know it, we will be to the end. Yeah. Don't forget Sunday is Mother's Day. Mr. T never forgot that, right? Mr. T loves Mother's Day. Cena, Sammy, to my recollection, Adam, and you could clear this up, is that intro match that Sammy had when he really wasn't even part of the roster and he tore his shoulder? Is that the only time they've ever actually interacted? Like in a true match? I've got Sammy as my early pick to win the Rumble. I don't know what you guys think. Mr. T is still talking about his mother. Yeah, see, boss, there's and kid, there's a little bit of freshness to that. Then that's something new. Sami Zayn is like the last card to pull right now. Sami Zayn's the one guy that a title win would mean something, like the big moment that's still needed. The Rumble did just happen, but the way calendars work, it's going to happen again in January. Yeah, we're still not really over the Jey Uso win. He does not feel like part of the main event scene, does he? We haven't talked about him in a while. Not a lick, E. Not a lick. All right. I'm just saying, long-term planning, E. You've got the Rumble happening in Saudi Arabia. Seems like Sammy's heating up just enough. And as the precedent has been set, if he's not the guy to main event WrestleMania, that's apparently okay because the Royal Rumble winner never main events WrestleMania anymore. But I think he's a pretty darn good choice for right now. It's super early. It is. But Sammy's waiting in the wings. He's off to the side. Part of Sammy's whole gimmick now is he gets beat up and stays off TV for a little while, just so he can linger just long enough to come back and be super over. I've been talking for an hour and 40 minutes. It might be time for me to sign off. What do you guys think of Backlash? Any final thoughts? Overall, I thought it was a very, very enjoyable show. Did not love that main event. Did think it was a great main event. Thought it was a little convoluted. Still not totally bought in on this Cena heel turn. Totally not bought in on Cena matches, but I think this was a much, much improved performance than what we saw out of him at WrestleMania. And absolutely, Michael, as a show, it's hard to compare this to WrestleMania. It's hard to compare a 2.5 hour show to 2 nights of WrestleMania. But the takeaway from this night, I felt was much better than WrestleMania. So for there, I give it a bit of a thumbs up. The women's match was great. The Fatal 4-Way was great. The main event was interesting. The McAfee stuff didn't take away. And the Dominic Mysterio stuff was, if not unspectacular, it was just fine. Overall, thumbs up pay-per-view. Great high-level Saturday night chat, guys. I was debating since I stopped doing the Raw post shows. Am I still going to do the pay-per-view post shows? I think so. I think the last hour and 40 minutes have been a breeze. I think I'll talk to you guys on Wednesday night. See you guys later.